jury has found Chandler Halderson guilty of all charges in the death and dismemberment of his parents. After deliberating just over 2 hours, the Dane County jury found 23-year-old Halderson guilty of killing, cutting up, and hiding the remains of Bart and Krista Halderson. He was also found guilty of lying to law enforcement when he initially claimed that his parents were just simply missing. Court TV legal correspondent Chandler Painter has more details on the verdict and what lies ahead for the convicted murderer.
Hey, good morning, Ted. After deliberating just over 2 hours, the jury of 10 men and 2 women found 23-year-old Chandler Halderson guilty on all counts for the murder and dismemberment of his parents, Bart and Krista Halderson. Chandler was arrested July 8th after telling Dane County Sheriff's deputies his parents went missing after a 4th of July trip to northern Wisconsin with an unknown couple, a story prosecutors argued quickly fell apart.
He had 2 options. Own up to his lies, stand up and finally tell the truth for once, or like a coward, shoot your father in the back. And that's exactly what happened.
Over the course of 7 days, prosecutors called 67 witnesses to prove how Chandler Halderson committed the murders at home on July 1st after his father discovered he'd been lying about attending college, one of a series of lies prosecutors said he'd long been telling everyone, including that he worked for American Family Insurance and SpaceX. When the state rested yesterday, the defense didn't put on a case and the defendant did not take the stand. Instead, his attorneys argued in closings that intentional murder wasn't proven beyond a reasonable doubt.
I want you to spend time on the homicides. Ask yourself the questions that you need to ask. I guarantee you that the 12 of you that are going to go back and deliberate are all going to have 12 different theories on what happened, and that's a problem.
Defense attorney Crystal Vera admitted Chandler is a liar and conceded he was guilty of hiding his parents' body parts, but argued motive to lie is not intent. Ultimately, the jury disagreed, and now Chandler Halderson faces a mandatory life sentence, something the Dane County District Attorney agreed was justice.
I would say that, we are grateful for this outcome. We hope that it brings some satisfaction, although bittersweet. We know that we cannot bring Bart and Krista back, but this is the first step to hopefully some finality in this situation.
And Ted, Chandler Halderson will be formally sentenced in March. Back to you.
All right, our thanks to Chandler Painter. Still with us, trial attorney C.K. Hoffler, criminal defense attorney, and civil attorney Jesse Lull. Jesse, to you first on this one. This was no surprise that the guilty verdict came in. Overall, though, I'd like to get your opinion on the way this case was tried. Yes, they had a lot of ammunition, but it was very methodical and so compelling, the way that the evidence was delivered to this jury.
I agree with you, Ted. This was a well thought out, well presented case. The evidence was, the witnesses were lined up correctly. I think I really cannot find fault with most of the information that was as how it was delivered. But you got to remember also the big draw in the case was just the horrible gruesomeness and the brutality of this particular homicide that had everyone totally enraptured with the case. And so everyone was very intent on listening on the details. It doesn't help that defense attorney calls her own client a liar. So.
Yeah, CK, this is one of those cases that, as Jesse was saying, it's scary. You're thinking, because a lot of the cases we cover, you think, oh, could I somehow end up there in that situation? And you think, I guess I could see that happening. This one, you're like, wow, who is this? How did this happen? Are there people like that running around? Yes, there are. So the idea of answering that question of why and how, it didn't come into play. In fact, the DA in Madison, Wisconsin talked about this idea that they'll never know how this happened or why this happened. Take a listen, and then we'll get your reaction.
The one thing that our traditional criminal justice system never really may get to is the why. It may not. We cannot reach into somebody and figure out the why unless they're willing somehow to give that information to us. So we may never know. But we do our best, and we do our best to make sure that we can cover all our bases and prove the charges that we decide to bring beyond a reasonable doubt, and I think that's what happened here.
TK, it's frustrating though, is it not, in cases like this where you're just left wondering?
Absolutely. You know, Ted, it's frustrating. This case was so heinous, so absolutely despicable. The actions of Chandler were not just those of a coward, of a murderer, but of a monster. And as a parent, you know, you do wonder, how is it that a child would grow up and become such, at age 23, kill his parents in this way and have such a manipulative, calculated plan to conceal it? And so he's a compulsive liar in addition to all the other things. But I think what's striking about this case is that the defense put up no defense because there was no defense to put up. And so it made it very easy for the jury to convict him on all counts because there simply was not an explanation. We were never going to understand why, but there was no explanation, no counter evidence. And the state had so many witnesses that the defense simply, I hate to say they caved, but they caved, and there was no way that Chandler could take the stand. So this case leaves you with a sense of, my goodness, we hope that this is a single solitary case, but unfortunately we know that there are people that are very deranged and that do commit these crimes from time to time. But in the context of jurisprudence, this is probably as close as you're going to get to an open and shut case simply because of the facts and the fact that the defense put up no defense.
Yeah, it was the proverbial slam dunk in terms of the case that was brought, but also very sobering to your point of the details of why they were there in the first